Welcome everyone to the Unboxing Careers podcast. I am your host, Greg Zakowicz. Have you ever wondered about a career in defense contracting? Well, you're about to find out what it's all about. But before we do, be sure to like, rate, review, and share the podcast so the love goes a long way. And remember, the next time you need to gift, visit thoughtfulcollection.com, your one-stop shop for thoughtful gifts that show you care. thoughtfulcollection.com. All right, I'd like to welcome to the show Roger Smith, defense contractor extraordinaire. We're going to dig into exactly what that means here over the next few minutes and kind of get into the whole career side. So, Roger, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this. When I found out what your audience was like, I was like, that's exactly who I want to share some ideas.
Excellent. I'm going to change the audience right now. We're retooling. No, I'm just joking. Well, we're glad you're here. It's a topic or a career that I have limited knowledge in, but it's always kind of fascinated me, right? I stand kind of on the periphery, so I'm excited to dig into this with you. But that being said, let's start with this. Tell us about kind of what you do, what your current role is, maybe company, if it matters at all, and kind of walk us through some high-level experience. And then we'll dig into that a little bit as we move through about defense contract. And what are we up to, Roger?
Yeah, what does that mean? You know, if I would have been in high school or even college and you asked me, do you want to work for a defense contractor? I would have said, I don't think I know what that is. But when somebody kind of lays it out for you, you're like, oh, that's obvious. So
Yep.
if you look at the Air Force, the people in the Air Force, they fly the planes. But who makes the airplanes? Well, usually a company like Lockheed Martin. And if you go to Lockheed Martin and you walk around their plant, there are all these people in casual clothes like you and I are wearing right now that are designing the plane, that are out on the floor machining the plane and building it and putting it together and then selling it to the Air Force. So a defense contractor pretty much makes everything that the military uses, from boots to airplanes and satellites. They make that stuff, or they help operate it. And you can get really broad when you say help operate it. What do you mean? We won't get into that. But yeah, the maintenance of it, the services of it, a lot of that's done by contractors. And
Yeah, you think? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I came out of college. Well, I got to the end of my college education and started interviewing. And I kind of learned what a defense contractor was during the interviews because they were hiring. And you'd go to Lockheed and do an interview, and they'd talk about how you'd be part of the F-16 development team. Or you would go to, at that time, McDonnell Douglas, it's now Boeing, and they'd say, oh, we're better, we'll build the F-15 and the F-18 and that kind of stuff. So I kind of learned as I was interviewing, and they knew. I was the 1,000th person they'd interviewed for an engineering job, and they knew how dumb we all were about their industry. And so they were pretty lenient on us.
And you said you went to school, so tell us about your study. I'm assuming engineering, but walk us through kind of what'd you go to college to study?
Yeah, I started studying math. I was good at math in high school, and so when I went to college, that's what I chose as my major. And at the time, I pretty much knew there were probably two kinds of math jobs. There was a math teacher or math professor, and there were math people at the insurance companies figuring out how much your policies should cost. That's pretty much all I knew. And then after my undergraduate, I went to graduate school, and I shifted a little bit into operations research and statistics. And operations research is very much a defense contracting kind of degree. You're essentially studying how to optimize something that's really complicated, how to make a manufacturing line most productive, how to bomb the most number of targets with the least number of airplanes. That was actually a problem I worked on after I got into defense contracting. And then when I got out, I had both a bachelor's and a master's degree to work with, which was unusual. Like maybe 20% of the people they were hiring had graduate degrees. The other 80% were probably bachelor's degrees. So that's how I got started.
Would you say it's a fair assessment to assume that most people, I mean, you've been in the career for a long time, most people going into this career kind of figure out that that's the career they're going to go into as they're navigating school or even freshly out of school? Because as you're going through and kind of focusing on a certain concentration, I think you mentioned it yourself, it's like, hey, you know what? Most of those people wind up going into defense contracting because that's where the work is.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you find that there's a good subset of people that go into it saying, hey, I'm going to study this because I want to go into defense contracting? How would you frame which way most people think about it and navigate to it?
I don't think they target defense contracting. I think if they're going to be an engineer, a mathematician, a computer scientist, and some sciences, they're probably thinking, oh, I'm going to work for Google or Facebook or Tesla. Somebody that makes something that's really sexy sounding and pays super well. And some of them will. But getting into those companies by name is really difficult. So the people who get the jobs first, they graduated from Stanford, MIT, Berkeley, places like that. And it's not to say everybody can't get in, but those guys get first shot at the job. And so I think if you went to a state university, which I did, and they were good state universities, maybe there's a lot more opportunity for you in something that has more jobs than that and that are also looking for a much broader set of skills. Um, so, yeah, I think they end up there or realizing it later somewhere during the degree study. And they'll probably have professors that have funding for research from military organizations. And so that's how they'll get introduced to it. They'll maybe even get to work on something while they're in college.
Do you find the transition, the being able to navigate between kind of working for, I want to say it's public sector work because it's technically not, but you're working for the government on projects versus the private industry? That's, we'll use your example, Google, Facebook, something like that.
Yeah.
Do you find in your field that people that go into defense contracting typically stay in that, or do you find there's a lot of shifting back and forth, either by burnout or poaching?
I think they typically stay.
Yeah.
They bleed out into other industries. I bled out after 20 years. I went to healthcare. That's a later story. But once you get in, a contracting job like, let's say, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris, Raytheon, General Dynamics, those are the big five. Then there's, I actually looked it up. There's actually like 59,000 defense contracting companies in the United States. But those are the big five that people recognize. The job they're offering you is really solid. It's a very good middle class income with a nice benefits package. So once you're in, it's a comfortable place to be. Like, for example, the salary they'll offer you will probably be right around the average for your degree and your university.
Okay.
You would probably get more from Facebook, but you'd get less if you were writing software for a local accounting company or something. So it'll be good and average. And then they'll also give you an insurance package, which you pay part of, but the company pays a bigger part of. They'll make available a 401k, which if you're talking to high school and college kids, they're like, why am I thinking about a 401k? Believe me, when you have
compounding
as much
interest,
as I do, you'll be like, that was so golden. You essentially put aside something like 6% of your salary before taxes, and the company usually drops in an additional 3% in addition to your salary. And so then they give you 10 days of holidays and 2 weeks of vacation. And you're like, that's pretty solid. I like that. I'd like more of it, all of it. Yeah. But they put together a package that makes me feel pretty comfortable and safe. And so you go to work at the company, you start working. And if you're at a bigger company, one of the advantages is that they'll have a lot of different projects for you to work on, and you'll get assigned to one. Hopefully you like it, But if you don't like it, there are others happening around you that you might be able to switch into. Or when you finish that project, then they'll roll you to the next project. If you're at a smaller company, they probably can only use you for one specific contract. And when that contract ends, if they don't have another one for you, you might be looking for a job. So I've been with both the biggest defense contractors with 100,000 employees. We had actually 30,000 in the facility that I was working in.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a factory. It was actually the factory where they make the F-16 fighter. So a lot of those people were machinists, but there were several thousand engineers. So you've got this secure place to work. And I worked there for the first job for 5 years. And I probably worked on easily a half a dozen different projects. I started on the F-16 project, and then I rolled from that onto a new airplane that was being built. That was, I don't know how classified it was. It doesn't even exist. It was a project that got scrapped before it ever got built. Yeah, and so I had five.
Exist, Roger, with quotation marks.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist with quotation.
Exist. That's right. If you trace it back, well. Yeah, I can't even talk about it to this generation because it's too old. People go, what? But imagine something like the SR-71 spy plane, only better. Like
okay.
That.
Awesome.
So I worked on 5 or 6 different projects. And then I got an offer from a company of 100 people. Now, how do you go from a company of 100,000 to 100?
That's a move.
It was huge. I'd been at the big company, which is now Lockheed Martin, for almost 6 years. And I just felt, I was like, I feel like a number here. I just feel like I'm not that personally valued. And I thought I'd feel more loved and more taken care of at a smaller company. And so I shifted to the 100-person company and loved it. Loved it. The pay package was almost the same. I got more money, but the package itself was about the same. And I think you'll find that in most defense contractors, the package is the same because they're all being reimbursed for their expenses by the same government, the same Department of Defense. And so they have available to themselves pretty much the same pool of money, and the regulations on how to spread it out between insurance and 401k are all about the same. So you can get about the same thing. But I went from being, kind of one of 30,000 to being one of 100, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the more relaxed environment. There was less bureaucracy, and we all knew each other. The customer knew us really well. So you would look at the customer who's asking you to build things every day. He'd walk into your office and say, how's it going on this piece of code? Or is this capability going to be ready for me on the day I need it? Whereas at the big company, you never saw them because they were talking to people several rungs above you in the ladder. So that was why the small company was good. The big company was great because I remember walking out of the building where I worked and watching an F-16 being test flown in the sky above us. And I'm like, I had a little piece to do with making that airplane up there. That really made me proud. And also you could explain it to your parents and they're like, I can't believe my son does this. Yeah.
So a couple questions based on this, and you partially answered the one, but when you went to work initially for the large company, did you feel valued at the time, or is it something where as you became more senior, exposed to more, right, your lifestyle is probably changing a little bit, I'm assuming at that time as well, but was it that you didn't feel valued the more senior you got, or was it just something maybe was always there, but you just weren't aware of it?
Yes, for me, more senior. But when I first hired on, I felt honored that they would choose me and trust me to build part of it. And there's a lot of checks and balances. So it wasn't like I was specifically saying, I think the F-16 should carry weapons of this type. And they went, okay, we'll do that. You're 25 years old. You must know what you're doing. But just, I felt really honored that I could be part of something that big. And then as the years progressed, it was still great to be part of something that big. But then you start feeling the bureaucracy. You start feeling how all of your ideas have to be vetted by 3 different layers first. Or when you think you've done a fantastic job, the bureaucracy doesn't notice. And so you're like, it's not just, I'm not imagining it. I really did do great on this, but I'm kind of it's not being noticed or appreciated.
That makes sense.
So when I went to the smaller company, I was kind of a rock star, and that helped validate the fact that I was doing really good work at the bigger company. But I was a rock star, and there was I got a lot of attention, a lot of rewards, and stock ownership, and things that I was like, this says, yeah, I'm doing the right thing.
So I work in the technology field. There's obviously tons of startups, really small companies like you're describing, and then there's large ones, and I've worked for both of them. So you think about companies like Oracle that have, hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide. And there are certainly differences between small companies, mid-sized companies, really large companies, especially from people that work there, right? So you were mentioning kind of going in, there's a couple layers of bureaucracy, right? That happens kind of across the board. And I can kind of point to, hey, you know what? You'd be really good at a startup if you enjoy these type of things. And you'd be probably really comfortable at a large organization if you enjoy these type of things. Uh-huh. Can you say the same thing from your experience doing what you do, that certain personalities or people with certain tendencies might do better at larger versus smaller companies?
Yes. So if you like structure and you like it being very clear what your responsibility is every day, what you need to do, and somebody's going to point out, I need you to do this, and I need it to be delivered in a month, and I need it to be of certain quality, and I need you to be part of these teams. If you can be directed like that and be comfortable with that, then a large company is really good, or a large project is really good for you. And also, if you like, working from home wasn't a thing for most of everybody's career until COVID. Working from home wasn't a thing. So depending on how much work from home people can do now, but having a place to go every day where you're like, this is my office, this is my company, this is the facility where I work. I like putting this badge on, and my identity is partly what comes from the company. That's good for a large company. If you can thrive where what is expected from you is more nebulous and you have to figure it out, sometimes guess, where you don't have as much support, so that your job isn't this big, it's some part of lots of different things, because you don't have a specialist to help with everything on the block. So pretty much anything that needs to be done, probably you're going to be doing some of it. And if you're also comfortable working more than 40 hours a week. So at Lockheed, I pretty much punched the clock 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. We did work overtime, but it was unusual. And then when I got to the smaller company, it was standard 45 hours a week, and working more was not unusual at all. But I would also say we were so enthusiastic about what we were doing that we didn't mind. We were the right age. At the time, I didn't have children. I was married, but I didn't have children. So I was the right age to work an extra hour or stay late one day a week. And I was like, I don't care. This is so engaging. I'm happy to do this. But you have to be comfortable with I'm not quite sure. And when things blow up and you go like, you can't say, it's not my fault. It's not my responsibility. Everything's your responsibility, especially fixing whatever just blew up. So get busy and fix it. So there is a different expectation, a different level of support in the big and small company.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you for that. How about a typical week? I know this is going to vary based on kind of what you do, project you're on, role, large company, small company, but maybe take one of your previous projects and if you can, just kind of give people a sense of it. So is it mostly meetings? Is it mostly just, hey, this is my job and I'm kind of independent and I got to deliver on a deadline?
Yeah.
Walk us through what someone might expect from between, I guess, meeting, interpersonal stuff, and then, how much is kind of solo. This is me, and that's it.
Yes, I can do that. In fact, I'm going to use a specific time and place as an example.
Excellent.
So I'm working in Manassas, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. It's a great little town outside of D.C. And I'm working for this company of 100 people, right? So every day we go in, and I'm part of a team. I think I was the lead of this team of about 5 people. And we would go in, we'd set up our computers, and we'd start writing code. And when we needed to talk about something, we didn't have meetings. We'd get up and walk to the other person's office and say, how's it going with this piece? I need this done so that I can do the next piece of something. And so there were very few meetings, but there was a lot of walking back and forth and talking to each other. Now the team is only 5 people, but the team I had was 5 people. The whole project was probably 25 people, and we're divided in these little specialty areas of 5 or 8 people each. So about once a week, they'd pull all 25 of us together, and we'd spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half, coordinating and talking about how all the pieces are going to come together. And then we'd rush back to our cubicles and start working. So we would literally meet for an hour or 2 per week. That was max. The rest was all programming.
Okay.
And I remember calling back to the friends that I had left at Lockheed and going, you won't believe this. I program 40 hours a week or more, and I sit in meetings 2 hours a week. And they're like, no way. You can't run a project like that. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. We can. Okay, so we're happily working along. And then we get invited on a team to bid on a really big multi-million-dollar contract. We're going to be one small part of the team, and the prime contractor is, at that time, IBM. So IBM has since sold this business to a company called L3Harris. But at that time, it was IBM. We're like, okay, we're part of a larger team. So we start working with the larger team. They literally had us in meetings 4 hours a day, every single day. And I'm like, when are we supposed to do the work? We're always sitting in meetings talking about doing the work. When do we do the work? That was pretty frustrating. What essentially happens is, instead of getting a project done in 6 months, you're spending half your time in meetings, your project gets done in a year or longer because you're spending all this time coordinating. Now, if the product is really big, it takes more coordination time and more planning and more double checking. So that's fair. But it was just in the culture of IBM that every single day you scheduled at least 4 hours of meetings every day. And that did not fit our culture very well. So we did have a lot of angst going on. But we also won a $50 million contract that kept us working for 5 years. And so we put up with it. That's the way we lived, as long as you worked on that project.
That's a great example. I love it. It's pretty indicative, just regardless of the industry, how many meetings that I've generally found large companies versus smaller, more nimble companies have. There's usually a pretty big disparity there. So
yeah.
That points to it pretty well. I want to talk about the sector a little bit if we can. So you mentioned earlier seller expectations, but you also kind of mentioned, hey, I'm one of 1,000 applying for a job. Can you talk just briefly about level of competition in the field when you're getting into it?
So one of the reasons I would recommend that young graduates look into defense contracting is because there are literally so many jobs. There are engineers working on defense projects. The estimate is there are 1 million of them in the United States. So there are 1 million people with an engineering or technical degree working for one of those 59,000 defense contractors I mentioned. So there are a lot of jobs. The second thing is these jobs exist in every single major metropolitan area in the country. So it doesn't matter what metro area you're near, there are some defense companies there. I happen to be in Orlando, and Orlando's not like a San Diego. San Diego is one of the hottest hotspots in defense contracting, as is Washington, D.C. Orlando's not a big hotspot, but we easily have 400 companies here doing defense contracting. So there's 400 places you can potentially interview, or at least ask. 400 companies are not hiring at any one time. So that's one of the good things. They're also going to be jobs anywhere around a military base. So if you're in some remote town, like let's mention Leavenworth, Kansas, which is known for its federal prison, which is parked right next door to a gigantic Army base. There are lots of defense contracting jobs in Leavenworth, Kansas, if you love Kansas and you want to live on a farm that's 20 minutes outside of town. So there's a broad variety of places for you to choose to work. And I don't think most people know that. And in fact, if you are going to a traditional college, meaning not remote, but if you're going into a college, that college is probably in a town that's big enough that it also has defense contractors there. So pretty much, not every college town. Here in Florida, Gainesville is our biggest college town, and Tallahassee, but they're not big defense contracting cities. They have some, but they're not big.
Gotcha.
Here in Florida, the biggest places would be Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando. Yeah, I think that would be the big one. Tampa especially.
Awesome. I had a buddy stationed in Leavenworth before. So, yeah. You were telling me about it. I just keep thinking of the stories he used to tell me about it. Good times. So, how about essential skills going in? So a lot of job availability out there. Still have to land the job. You talked about interpersonal skills, right? You were, especially at the smaller company, but you've got to work as a team and as an individual, but there's a larger goal with these, and there's a lot of millions and billions of dollars that the government's paying to get these things done and get them done right. Are there essential skills that you find the most successful people in your industry tend to have versus others?
Yeah. Let's pick the people who are more successful at it than I was. I did really well based on technical capabilities, and I'm pretty good at communicating. I mean, my work style is similar to what we're doing here in this podcast, but something that I'm not as good at is navigating bureaucracy and the relationship with the power players in the company. I was a little naive about that. And so I didn't cultivate relationships with people above me who could make a difference in when I get promoted, raises, stuff like that. I pretty much just had my head down doing the work and thought the work would speak for itself. And that worked pretty well. I can't complain. But I have a friend who also could manage the corporate politics and knowing how to move through the organization better. And he actually, we'll call him Steve, because I don't want to tell you his real name. He may not want me to tell you his real name. But he ended up staying at Lockheed for his entire 35-year career. He came to the company at the same time I did, right out of college, and he retired just last year, I think, a couple years ago. And he told me a little bit about his retirement package. It blows my mind. They treated him so well, and he had so many perks that I'm like, you're killing me. I didn't even know that kind of perk was available. Now, I'm going to tell you what it is, but I want to say most kids should not expect this because I never even heard of it until he retired. But he helped secure a multi-billion-dollar contract somewhere in his career. And in exchange for that, they put him on a bonus program, which was equal to his annual salary. So every year he got his salary, and at the end of every year, he got a bonus equal to 100% of his annual salary.
Make me feel bad, Ranger.
It made me feel bad, too. And then when he went to retire, they're like, okay, you have your 401k, you have all this stuff. You also have a retirement pension, which is there. And you're not getting your salary anymore. But for the next 4 years, we're still going to give you that 100% bonus that you didn't
Oh,
get.
hello.
I know, right? I was like, Steve, you have totally outshone me. You have really done fantastically well. And that's the kind of compensation that I had no idea was even available. So I wasn't shooting for it because I didn't think it was possible.
I don't
Yeah.
think many people do. You might
No.
be a shrewd negotiator, you know?
Yeah. So
Uh,
that's why I share it, because I think more people need to know that there are deals like that.
so you mentioned in that story, Roger, pensions. And
Yeah.
pensions used to be very common
Yes.
among a bunch of different companies. They're kind of going by the wayside now.
Right.
Uh, Fewer and fewer companies are actually offering those. Is it still, I don't want to say common, but is it still uh, a fair expectation in defense contracting because you're working with government contracts that these companies still offer pensions because they want to retain the talent, or are you seeing it on your side as well, just kind of following suit with the rest of the
Yeah. No,
industrialized
it's
companies?
followed suit with everybody
Okay.
shifting to 401k. So I don't think there's any company still offering a pension. And if you're in high school and you're going, what's a pension? A pension is essentially kind of like Social Security. With the number of years of work you put in, they guarantee you a certain amount of payment after you retire for the rest of your life. And a lot of companies discovered that that pension overhang, meaning the number of people that stayed with the company and came out, was just building up and getting bigger and bigger. And so every year they needed to put more and more of their profits into the pension pool to pay the people that they promised this to. And there are big companies, not defense contractors, but big companies like the automotive companies that actually go bankrupt because that pension pool gets bigger than their profit margin. So now there aren't any pensions. Everybody's on a 401k plan. And in a 401k plan, you choose to take a percentage of your salary and put it into a retirement package. And then the company, to incentivize you, the company usually matches half of that, something like that. So if you put in
Yeah.
6% of your salary, they put in another 3%. And you're essentially getting an instant 3% raise if you agree to do it. And then you get that money once you turn 65 or sometime after that. So you're
Uh,
self-funding your retirement instead of having the company fund it for you. Yeah.
Put it in when you're young, kids.
Yeah. Do
Start
put it
early.
in when you're young.
Uh,
Yeah. In defense, when you're working in these industries, I think there are some personality or personality is not quite right. Traits that you should have. So and some of these are going to be obvious after I say them. But first, you have to be the kind of person who is pro-military because you're going to be helping build an airplane or an artillery piece or software or a satellite or something that's being used or being prepared for use in war. And so you have to be willing to accept that you're contributing to that. And everybody can't do that. Some people, morally, they just can't accept that. So you have to be the kind of person who is okay with that and sees that as a positive trait, not a negative one. And it's something that makes America strong in the world as opposed to leaving us weak and unable to take care of ourselves. So that's the first thing. You have to be able to be pro-military and have some degree of what we usually call patriotism. Um, uh, the people that work in defense are also um, slightly right-leaning, and that has become much more important in the last few years. It used to be it didn't matter. You
yeah.
could be anywhere, but nobody talked about it. But in general, the industry attracts people that are more to the right than to the left, and you just have to be able to work with that kind of person. Doesn't mean you can't be left leaning and still work there. You certainly can, but you can't expect it to be filled with left-leaning people. You'll find there's more right-leaning people there. Um, yeah, I think those are two of the big things you need to kind of get your head around. And you'll be working with people who are retired military. So eventually people finish their 20, 25 years in the military, and when they get out as an officer or a senior enlisted person, they're most likely to come to work for this defense contractor because they flew the F-16, for example. And so you'll find them in management ranks working with you. So you'll be working with people who formerly were in the military.
Fair to assume you've got to be good at taking orders?
Yes, that is true. The military people, when they retire, they don't retire. If they're your boss, they're going to boss you around like they bossed around the people when they were in the military. And that's not like you'd see in the old movies. It's much more humane and personal now than it would have been 50 years ago, 30 years ago. But yes, there's definitely a command and control kind of, here's what we're doing because I said this is what we're doing. Yeah, and you have to be able to accept some of that.
You've mentioned some of the pros and cons already for, I'll just call it private sector here. It's not the right word here, but going for a non-defense contractor position
Right.
versus working a defense contract. Anything that maybe we neglected to say along that front of, hey, you know what, if you like this, you should probably go here. If you don't like this, you should probably go there. You talked a lot about it, but any pros and cons of either that maybe you didn't mention in one of the answers earlier that you kind of feel to understand? And if not, that's okay too.
So one contrast, I mentioned that after 20 some years, I switched to healthcare.
Yeah.
It was because a really sweet opportunity came up. It wasn't because I was sick of defense contracting or anything like that. Just the opportunity was too good to pass up. And when I moved into working at a large hospital system, I found the culture there was extremely different than the defense contracting and working with the military. And it took me literally at least a year to adjust my thinking and my behavior so that I fit in at the hospital. It's a softer kind of management and leadership and thinking. A lot of focus on the patient. So that the golden touchstone when you're in the hospital is everything it kind of revolves around patient outcomes, which essentially means how healthy is the patient after you treat them. That's the golden touchstone. In defense contracting, the golden touchstone is usually how am I supporting the warfighter? What am I creating that helps the person who's putting their life on the line? Make sure it's quality to keep them alive. And that it was just so much softer, and it was less of a rigid working structure of we work for 40 hours a week at least, and we relax during lunch. That's it. When you got to the hospital, there was a lot more of we build a team, we care for each other, we goof around a lot, and we're not actually productive for a half an hour, but nobody cares. Not nobody cares. Everybody sees the team building and the closeness you're creating as also valuable, not just producing software or producing hardware. Yeah. And I didn't get that for a few months. And then when I got it, it took me a while to actually start behaving that way.
So now you're just taking hours off every day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Lead by example. So is that, so you mentioned the opportunity was too good to pass up, but it's also, you mentioned kind of a softer environment. So is that something that appealed to you at this time because of, not to say your age, but your lifestyle, right? So you're at a different place, you have different responsibilities, you are a different age. Like, would that have appealed to you, say, 20 years ago versus now, or not?
Yeah, I don't think it would have. It wasn't macho enough.
Okay.
When I was younger, I've always been, and I still am, really physically healthy. So I have very little interaction with the healthcare system. And I like the macho-ness of building the F-16 or building a simulator, a tank simulator or something like that. That was always that really felt good. And the fact that you needed to go to the hospital or you had physical frailties was something I didn't have experience with and just really didn't find attractive. And then when I went to the hospital when I was older, I didn't see it so much as my own health, but I saw the kind of people that come to the hospital and you really develop a sympathy for them. Typically, they're there for one of three big things. We're on a new tangent here. There's three big things that put you in the hospital. It's not very random. One is an accident. So you had a car accident or a bicycle accident or whatever. You can't do much about that. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. And you're just the poor person who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time or fall off a ladder. And you need hospital care. So if you don't have an accident, you're not going. Number two is people who have a genetic disorder, a genetic malfunction of some kind, and they didn't know it was going to happen. They were just born with it, and at a certain age, it manifests, and they find themselves in need of medical care. And you're like, that poor people with Parkinson's, for example. You're like, that poor person. There's just nothing you could do. But then the last one is people who do it to themselves. A lot of people are there because of smoking, drinking, and obesity. And those are things they've done to themselves, and they've done it to such a degree that now they're falling apart. And even there, you're like, oh, they're such good people anyway, but they've driven themselves down the wrong path. And so I found when I was older, I could look at those three cases with a lot more concern and empathy than I could have when I was younger. Yeah.
Makes tons of sense. Thanks for sharing that. We talk about workout routine or something here before we close out. How about as we start to wind down, Roger? I'll ask kind of a two-pronged question here. So think about a career in defense contracting. I don't know why I say contracting. Defense contracting. Most challenging part of the career in the industry and the most rewarding part of the industry for you.
Okay. The most rewarding part is when you see the thing that you helped build actually in action. I mentioned watching the F-16 fly, watching soldiers train in the flight simulators and the tank simulators that I helped build, and watching them get better at their craft because they were trained in those simulators. So actually getting to see that product doing something, that's really a thrill. And I'm sure people who make Ford F-150s feel the same way when they see that big old truck come off the line. But when you see that you've helped contribute to something really big, which literally those take thousands of people to make them. So that's the most rewarding piece. The most frustrating piece is, I think, after a few years, it's the bureaucracy. It's the fact that the machine moves slowly and needs lots of approvals before anything gets done. And so it's hard to see when the thing you did is actually going to roll out the door. And it may be years before it's finished. So here's an example. I mentioned we teamed with IBM for that big $50 million contract.
Yep.
It actually grew and grew from there. The $50 million ended up being a seed, which grew into something like $500 million. It was really a big project. But the simulator we were building, that we did the design and did a proposal to convince the government we knew how to build it. It didn't get used for about 11 years. It took 11 years to create it. And I had already left because I worked on it for about 5 years before I went, this thing's never going to get done. I give up. I'm going somewhere else. And so I left and went to the 100-person company. I went to the next person company. Anyway, but just the fact that it takes so long for a product to get done That's kind of discouraging. Now, if you want job security, that's great job security because 10 years for a simulator and at least 20 years to build an airplane or something. So you could be working on the same project for decades. But I didn't like it.
Very good. Roger, pointed piece of advice here. So talking directly to students, whether it's high school, college, or both, if it wraps to both, a specific piece of advice you would give to them now as they're thinking about going into the field or choosing a field.
Right. I would say you want to take your math, science, and technology courses serious because this is the 21st century. This is not the 19th century or even the 20th century. This is the 21st century. And so technology-based things are just going to become a bigger and bigger part of the world you live in. And so you need to take those courses more seriously than, I don't mean to diminish, than English and history and basket weaving or whatever else they're teaching in school. Some of those courses are really attractive and interesting, but they're not a big part of what makes the world run. And I think they're not going to be a bigger part. The technology pieces are going to be the bigger part.
Very good, Roger. Anything I maybe neglected to ask you today that you feel is important for the audience to know?
Don't be discouraged. We happen to live, thank goodness, you and I, and probably most of the people listening to this, we're living in a country that enjoys all of the benefits that are available in the world. And so if it's difficult to get a job, that's great. That's not great, but it's not impossible to get a job.
Right.
There are countries where it's literally impossible to get a job. There just aren't jobs. And it's literally impossible to get health care or whatever. So I would say, be optimistic and enjoy all the benefits we have here because we really have it good.
Yeah, very well said, Roger. Well, I appreciate your time. It was a pleasure having you. If someone has a career question for you, is there a good way for them to reach out to you?
The best way is on LinkedIn. So if you put my LinkedIn link in the notes, that would be the best place to find it because I get those notices and I can get right back to people through that.
Excellent. We'll be sure to do that. So Roger Smith, everyone, I'll call him a defense contracting extraordinaire. So I hope that everyone enjoyed the episode today. If you want to explore other careers or share yours with us, please check out our website. Until next time, be good, do good, God bless, go Bills.
I'm boxing careers.